look, if you want to be a multi-property real estate investor, don't just like beg, borrow, or steal money from your parents to like go buy a property. Go work with a multi-family property investor and be that guy or that woman's assistant for like 2 years.
Hello, everybody. It's Jake Stenziano, host of the Wheelbarrow Profits Podcast, here with my co-host, the multifamily mentor, the coach, the chef, the father, six, the best-selling author, the G-Daddy, Gino Barbaro. Gino, how's it going?
Mr. Stenziano, it's been a day, huh? It's been a good day.
It's been a long day, man. It's Corona this, PPP that, and we're just, figuring it out as we go, right? That's how we do it.
Throwing a little SBA, you never know. Learning every day, right? It's been a great day, though.
Learning every day. We have a very special guest today. Today's guest is Jordan Harbinger. Jordan, often referred to as the Larry King of podcasting, is a Wall Street lawyer turned interview talk show host. So he's okay. He left the dark side. He's going to be okay today. He's also a communications and social dynamics expert. So without further ado, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. It's nice to talk to landlords that I'm not suing,
Hey, man, easy, all right? Knock on wood. You never know. You got to be careful. It's happened before, okay? You got to be easy with that. So let's get into networking a little bit, because I think there's so much opportunity for folks right now with, potential recession on the horizon and folks needing, liquidity to take these deals down. Tell us a little bit about, your background, how you became a networking expert, and maybe, we'll dive into a little bit of how folks can go down that path.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when I first started at my law firm, I was pretty sure I was going to get fired. And this is 2006, 2007. I'd been pretty good in high school as far as being a student. And then when I got to college, I realized, oh man, everybody here is pretty smart, but they're all drinking all the time. I can outwork them. I can work harder than everyone else. So I started to work really, really hard and study a lot. And I was able to get by and beat everyone else, or not everyone else. Sorry. Beat the people in the class, because things are graded on a curve. So I call it's a contest. Like that's a war, when you're graded on a curve. Same thing with law school. But then when I got to Wall Street, it was like, ooh, everybody's smart. Everybody works really hard. I'm going to get fired. It's only a matter of time. And I started consulting the partners, and I was like, how do you get made partner? What's the most valuable thing you can do in a firm? Because I wanted to learn those skills ahead of everyone else. And some of the lawyers were like, it's all about bringing in business. If you can bring in business, you'll never get fired, because people make partner who bring in business. So I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. So I started taking networking and sales and all that classes, and they were taught by dudes in sweater vests that worked at like the YMCA. And they're like, look them in the eye and have a firm handshake. And I'm thinking, if I'm not getting $1 million law deal from Goldman Sachs or Bear Stearns or wherever our clients are, it's probably not because I don't have a firm handshake. There's something else going on here, and I'm not going to learn what that something else is from some dude in a sweater vest at the Learning Annex or the YMCA. Like, I'm just not. And not to knock on those guys. Like, they taught me some valuable lessons, but they had never made a sale. They'd never thrown together a real estate deal. They'd never done anything like that. They were teaching self-help classes part-time, after work, and like self-publishing their stuff to try and like get attraction. And I was like, this is not going to be it. I'm not knocking self-publishing, by the way. I know how that sounds. But what I mean is these guys had no experience. So I started to learn psychology, body language, persuasion, influence from everyone from like old spies to sales guys for great law firms or big companies. I started to just pay attention to everybody, real estate guys that I met, things like that had really made a name for themselves. And that stuff was important, man. I really took a lot of notes when it came to that. And I started learning networking and relationship development. And that was how I got into this in the first place. Was I was trying to not get fired. And then I essentially ended up leaving the law firm because the economic downturn in 2007-08 made us all leave. And instead of getting another job I didn't want, I started my podcast. And 13 years later, here we are in the next economic downturn.
So let's go back. Let's backtrack a little bit. What made you want to become a lawyer?
You know what? It was one of those things where people go, you should be a lawyer because you like to argue or you like to read or something. Just there's a lot of reasons that people become lawyers, and most of them are bad. So your aunt, who's a gym teacher, says, oh, you like to argue when you're 13, you should be a lawyer. And then you become a lawyer and you realize that lawyers spend less than a tenth of a percent of their time arguing about anything, unless you're just an a-hole in the office. Right. So like, or it's like, oh, you know, you like to do this and this and this, you should be a lawyer. None of those stereotypes are true. You know, most of the time, especially when you're working for a big law firm, you're doing like secretarial work for the first few years. You're not arguing in court, not doing any of that. So I became a lawyer because a lot of, I would say, overachiever types, they graduate from college and they go, I don't know how to get a job doing anything. I took anthropology and German and frickin' economics and accounting. I don't have any idea what to do. And you're getting job offers from like Pepsi Cola or something to be a junior level analyst in Manhattan making 50 grand a year, which is the equivalent of $28,000 everywhere else in the United States, you know? So like, there's a whole lot of, I'm screwed kind of happening. So I started to realize, okay, I have no real qualifications. You know, I'm just a random person who graduated with a degree from Michigan, but I don't have any competitive advantage. And that never was that more clear than when I went to Best Buy, and because I couldn't get a job, I went to Best Buy and my buddy's little brother was working there. He's like 17 years old. And he's like, we're hiring. And I was like, oh man, okay. And I did actually go and get an interview. And the guy was like, yeah, I think you're going to be a shoo-in. This is great. We love, you know, you're a college graduate, all this stuff. And I was like, this is going to suck so much, but I'll just do it for a few months. And then I was like, good. So I can build computers, and I think I would be best suited to be in the computer repair and the customer service, because I can like fix computers. I can build computers from scratch. And he's like, yeah, we're going to start you in music. And I was like, I don't know anything about music. And he goes, oh, it's fine. You can just shadow Tommy. And I was like, the 17-year-old kid who's my friend's little brother, he's going to be my boss / mentor when I sell Britney Spears CDs. And he's like, yeah, you have to do that for a few years, and then you can move up to computer repair and customer service. And I was like, you know what? Sorry to waste your time, but I just can't do this. Not just ego. There was a little bit of that, but I was also like, this is just a waste of life. Like me selling CDs for 2 years at an Ann Arbor Best Buy and not even being able to pay my rent.
He was giving you the roadmap to success, ridiculous. Man. Come on.
The roadmap to success. So I was like, this is stupid. I'll be better off just volunteering in like a Ukrainian orphanage or some BS like that. Like, you know, I would get more life experience out of becoming a barista at a coffee shop in France. If I'm going to be broke, I'm not doing it in freaking Ann Arbor. You know, where I just spent the last 7 years spending tuition money and hanging out. I'm not doing that. So I went to law school. Oh, at that point, 4 years. So I went to law school for an additional 3 years, and I got into Michigan law as well. And that was one of those places where it was a top 10 law school. So if you get in there, you kind of have to go, unless you also get into like Harvard or Columbia or something, which I sure as hell did not. So that was one of those times where all of the lawyers that my parents knew that would get on the phone with me, they were like, well, you know, you could do this, you could do that. Oh, you got into Michigan? Yeah, you should just go to law school. You're going to get a job on Wall Street and you'll make a ton of money. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. So that's what I did. I went to law school and I got a job on Wall Street and I started making a bunch of money. And I was like, hey, you know, this is pretty cool. I'm making more money than both my parents put together at the peak of their career in my first year out of here. And that's before bonus. So what could go wrong? Foreshadowing. Then there's an economic downturn and I stopped doing work because there's no work in real estate finance because we're all doing, you know, subprime mortgages. I don't know if you guys heard of those. So we're doing a bunch of that. And so that kind of was the obvious writing on the wall for a little while. Like it was like, hey, dude, you know, you are really playing with fire. And then the work completely dried up and they called us into a room and they were like, we're going to pay you for the rest of the year. There was like 9 months left in the year. So it was pretty good, but you should start looking for another job. So I just didn't look for another job, took my 9 month salary as my startup funds for my show, got picked up by Sirius XM satellite radio to do the show on in the meantime. And then kept doing my show, kept doing coaching and stuff like that, figuring I would take that 9 months and my business would be rocking and rolling by then. And then, 7 years later it was.
So let me ask you, before you get into network marketing, what would you say to somebody?
I was not in network marketing.
Well, Yeah, before you got into the podcasting
space, right?
in the networking space, before we talk
Yeah.
about networking itself, what would you tell people that are there? They don't know what to do. I mean, like, seems like you kept pivoting and figuring it out. Okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. What would you give people advice on where to start? Like, what should they do with their lives, basically?
What should people do with their lives?
Yeah, if you think about it, like, people are getting out of college right now. They don't know where to go. Like, they see your success. They say, well, he's doing a podcast. He's got a great show. And it's not that easy. People see
it's
us.
not easy.
So
what
advice would you give them as far as getting a job or getting going?
Finding their path, it sounds like.
Finding their path,
yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I would say, and just to be clear, network marketing, that's like MLM, multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
I advocate against that. And if, speaking of class action lawsuits, as per our previous conversation, those companies shouldn't even exist. And if I could, wipe them off the face of the earth,
Dude, I almost got roped into one. It was like, I was like 26 at the mall, and a random guy comes up to me. He's like, I can see that there's some opportunity within you. And it's like, they try to make you feel special. Then then I meet like with him and 3 guys at a diner.
Yeah.
And he like wants me to pick up the tab. I was like, dude, this is like the creepiest thing ever. So yeah, the MLM game is a little freaky for sure.
Yeah, it's freaky. It's predatory. It's, 99 point something% of people make zero income on it. It's a horrible scourge on society. Hence my revulsion to network marketing. So how do people find their path? That's a great question. I would say a lot of people are always trying to find their dream job or whatever when they get out of school. Stop with that unless you really have a good shot at it. Take pretty much any job where you can learn a skill and start stacking your skills. So what a lot of people do is they're like, oh, I really want to be I want to work for a tech startup in business development or something like that. Great. Go work for a tech startup. And if they don't want you for business development, just do sales. And they're like, oh, I don't want to do sales. Well, how do you know? Have you ever sold anything? Have you ever been trained to do sales? Like, this is a good time to learn a sales skill set because sales is useful in literally any business and anywhere. And I deal with a lot of small business owners and they'll be like, I'm in trouble doing this or this isn't working. And a lot of the time it's because they don't know how to sell. And I'm like, ooh, if only you'd learn sales. Oh, I don't want to be salesy. Okay, cool. Well, you can be broke instead. So, you can sell things without being gross, without being creepy. You can learn sales, you can learn marketing and things like that without being disgusting. So I would say, look, even if you don't want to get a job because you want to be self-employed and all these other things, get jobs where you can learn a skill. And if you're really doing menial work, like let's say your first few years out of college and you can't get a job anywhere other than like serving at a restaurant because that's what you have experience in and the market sucks, go get a job serving at a restaurant in another country or in another place. Because then at the very least, you might learn another language. Like if you end up getting a job serving at a restaurant, but you do it in Germany, cool. You're working on your German. You're doing it in China. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Work somewhere where you can do something that where you learn a skill. Sales, a language, customer support. Because really your first few years in business, you need to just build skills. They're just, you know what? You don't see that many like 22, 23-year-old entrepreneurs that aren't just like bullshitty thought leaders on Instagram because they're not doing anything. They can't do anything. They don't have any skills. So you find like people who are younger, they always want to do something that requires a ton of experience. But instead of going out and getting the requisite experience, they just keep trying their hand at the thing that they don't have experience for. And they bang their head against the wall for a long time. They want the shortcut. Yeah.
And a lot of it is extremely hard work and time, and that's not cool. That's not fun. And it doesn't kind of align with our immediate gratification society right now.
Yeah. Look, if you want to be a multi-property real estate investor, don't just like beg, borrow, or steal money from your parents to like go buy a property. Go work with a multi-family property investor and be that guy or that woman's assistant for like 2 years. Sit in all the meetings, take notes, handle the phone calls, schedule everything. You will know exactly how that business runs. You won't have done everything yourself, but you'll be sitting there while she's balancing her accounting and be like, what's that? How does this work? What does this do? Then you'll get promoted. She'll go, oh, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't be the person who just manages my schedule. Look at you doing accounting. Look at you handling problems with tenants or whatever, comes up. You're going to be the COO or the right-hand man in that company. Then you can go and start your own thing because you'll have investor contacts. You'll know how to manage the property. Don't just like sell a kidney and buy a property and then learn the hard way. There's a lot of mythology around that, especially in the United States. But most businesses are not started that way. And most people who start businesses that way fail really quickly because they make a bunch of mistakes on their own dime instead of learning from somebody else who can teach them to avoid those mistakes.
What about backing up? And do you have a framework or some sort of, I guess that's a framework for the way that you approach marketing or networking, excuse me.
Mm-hmm. You mean network marketing? No,
it's funny.
No. He's got me twisted up on it. No, but seriously, like in terms of, because like when we look at, our multifamily space, we look at buy right, manage right, and finance right. And we really look at it as like this three-legged stool in terms of how we approach the multifamily investing. Do you have any like framework that you apply to, growing your network?
Yeah, well, I have a course that I teach on this that's free. I don't know if you want me to give out the URL.
No, man, let it rip. We're not prude.
Okay, cool. It's jordanharbinger.com/course. Again, it's totally free. It's called 6-Minute Networking. And the reason I call it that is because it takes like 5 minutes a day, and 5-minute networking was taken. But 6-Minute Networking, the reason behind this is most people actually do not try to build and maintain relationships. You think you do, but you're not really doing it. Like, you can't reach out to your old boss. You don't really reach out to people that you've worked with in the past. You're not really in touch with the relevant people from your recent past. You think you do it naturally, but you're only communicating with people that are top of mind. And those are people that you're dealing with right now, or that are interested in something that you're interested in right now. You don't really have a diverse network. People think they do, but they find out they don't when they get laid off because of COVID-19. And they're like, I don't know anybody who's hiring because my awesome networking skills that I do naturally, supposedly, only include people in my office, my boss, the other people I went to school with who are also laid off. And I don't know anybody else outside my existing industry, which has been decimated, by COVID-19 or whatever. And I noticed that a lot. I noticed that when the law firm went under back in 2007, a lot of the guys that I was working with were like, how am I going to get another job? So all they did was call a bunch of dudes from law school and ask for other jobs. And I was like, you really think that in an economic downturn, all of our freaking first-year associate buddies who've been on the job for 8 months are going to be able to get you a job? You're delusional, dude. So, of course, they didn't have any network diversity. They couldn't do that. So what I was looking for before I decided to give up and just work on my own business was I was reaching out to completely different niches, not law firms. And I was like,
when was this in the story, though? When were you
2008.
But and that's right when you got laid off, though, you started hitting this.
Oh, yeah. This is right when they announced that we were going to be laid off, which is, by the way, way too late. So you have to dig the well before you get thirsty. You have to build and maintain relationships before you need them. And that's what the 6-Minute Networking course teaches you how to do. Because a lot of people who think they do this naturally, or there's people who go, man, I got 100 things to do in my business. I don't really want to go to mixers and all these other like misconceptions of what networking is. They're like, oh, I'm great at networking. Whenever I go to cocktail parties, people laugh at my jokes. And I'm like, so
you're just drunk, dude.
Yeah, I'm like, one, you're just drunk and people are being polite. And two, so once every 4 months when you go to a networking mixer, you meet a bunch of strangers that you never keep in contact with. And that's what that's why you think you're good at networking. Like, you're going to learn a very hard lesson if you ever need to call upon your network. So when I recently I had like a business meltdown a few years ago, and I ended up like suing my former business partners, and I had to start from scratch. And so what I did is I called like 140 people over the ensuing or the next few months, and I got business plans laid out. I got a ton of expertise. I got a ton of marketing help. I got a ton of people sharing and spreading the word about the Jordan Harbinger show to get back on my feet podcast wise. And it wasn't weird because I'd talked to every single one of those people I'd talked to in the past year. Usually a text or a message or a call like, hey, what's going on? Hey, thanks for this. Or an introduction to somebody else that could help them with something. So a lot of people, they go, here's how you can tell whether or not you have a good network. It's not a foolproof way because some people are just, shy or something. If you can reach out to pretty much anybody for something that you need, and I don't mean like your friends and family, I mean like a person you don't know well. Can you ask them to do something for you, or does that feel weird? Because if it feels weird or feels awkward, it's because you haven't really provided that person or that network any value. So it's weird because you aren't really entitled to ask them for anything. But since I'd been talking to these people in the past year, it was more like reaching out to old acquaintances and saying, here's what happened to me, and it's kind of nuts. I could use your help, versus what most people do, which is go, yeah, man, this is going to be the first time they've heard from me in like 2 years. What do they want? They're going to think I'm weird. Those people don't have good networks. You should be able to go, hey, I'm in deep-ish, who's willing to help me? And you should have hundreds of people raise their hands, not like 3 people that you knew from when you were 5 all the way up till now being the only people you can call on.
So Jordan, but that's a methodical process you're talking about, because you have to really focus on who you want to speak to. So how do you build that down? Because basically you need to chunk it down. You have to have a CRM. You really need to start.
That's what I'm saying. Is this systematized? That's what I want to drill down.
Yes.
Yeah. So every day I have a few drills that I do every single day. One of them is I go to the bottom I open up my phone. I open the text messaging app. I go all the way to the bottom. That's where the dead threads are, right? The weak and dormant ties. Like, hey, Jake and Gino, remember when we did that podcast? Like, I don't know, mid-COVID. Wow, that was a crazy time. Like, haven't talked to you guys in a while. Did a pretty bad job keeping in touch with you guys. That you might get that message from, well, not from me, because I'm better at keeping in touch than that. But let's say you get it from somebody who was on your show a year ago. Well, that's okay, because they're not asking you for anything. And if they do a regular job of keeping in touch, or, hey, there's another guest you guys might want. His name is such and such. I can make the intro. Would that be helpful? Yeah, sure. Shoot him our way. Thanks, Jordan. You're earning referral currency over time. It's weird to reach out to somebody when they go, hey, Jake and Gino, so are you guys hiring at all for your podcast? And you guys are like, who are you again? Oh, right. That guy we had on the show like 3 years ago.
How long's the gap?
Wow.
What's the gap?
You should be talking to everybody at least every 6 months. And that's what my CRM reminds me to do. And that's the minimum. Most people, it's 90 days. But I mean, you're not jumping on the phone. You're not going to meet them for coffee. I'm going to the bottom of my text threads because that's where the people are that I kind of forgot, right? Like, it's the guy you had lunch with 2 years ago at a financial conference. And you're like, I forgot to save that guy's number. So you send them something that's like, hey, Tom, Jordan Harbinger here. Been a long time since FinCon 2016. I've done a pretty rad job of keeping in touch, as you can see. Guess I forgot to save your number. In the meantime, I've had a kid running the Jordan Harbinger Show podcast. What are you doing? What's the latest with you? Now, you'll get a 50 to 75% response rate. Not bad. And you'll have a 5-message conversation with them and get a little update. And then it's fine. You throw them in your CRM and you keep in regular touch. So you're reactivating weak and dormant ties. But for everybody else, and for everybody, I also I really highly recommend the following exercise. This is called Layoff Lifelines. Take a piece of, digital paper out and write like the 10 or 15 people that you wish you'd kept better in touch with over the years. So like your guidance counselor, career counselor, whatever, if you just graduated, your old boss, your friend's dad, who's like a badass entrepreneur that you respected, maybe your old like Boy Scout leader. I don't know. Depends how old you are, right? If you're 30, it's going to be different than when you're 22. And if you're 40, it's going to be different than when you were 30. So make the list of people that you've lost touch with over like the last 10 years. Reach out to them now before you need anything. Because if you reach out to them when you need something, they're going to smell it. And also when you don't hear from somebody, they're going to smell it coming. Yeah. If you don't reach out to someone for a long time, they think, okay, is it Herbalife or Scientology? Like, what sort of weird crap are you getting into right now? Yeah. But if you reach out to them and they cautiously answer and all you do is catch up, and then 3 months, 6 months later, you send them some article that you think they'd be interested in, and then you send them a picture of your kid, and then a year later, you're sending them this. Then a couple years go by, and then when you do need something, you can be like, ooh, so I ran into a little bit of a pinch. Got laid off because of COVID-19. Any options? I'm good at sales. I'm good at marketing. I'm good at this, good at that. The people aren't going to go, ooh, this is weird. I'm just suddenly hearing from this guy. They're talking to an old friend. It's not weird. You're not weirdly entitled. They're going to reply to you. They're going to actually care about helping you. There's a massive, massive difference. So reach out to those people now before you need anything. Because once you need an agenda, or once you have an agenda, it's way too late to ask people, to cold call people, because they're going to be annoyed. Like, how annoyed are you when somebody comes out of the blue and want something? It's irritating. You're like,
it's work and you got enough other shit on your plate already.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's like, oh, now I'm good enough to keep in touch with. And it's really offensive when they're like, dude, I haven't talked to you in so long. And you're like, yeah, Yeah, cool. And you're a little suspicious, and they're like, yeah, what's going on? Oh, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. Do you have a job? You're like, I knew it. You just wasted all this time fake catching up with me, doing a fake "how are you doing"
This could be a
call when really
Seinfeld
you wanted
episode right
something.
now.
It totally, yeah. But I knew it though, right? And that happens,
Yeah.
and it's annoying. But if you do it and then you catch up, and then 3 months later you do it and you catch up a little bit more, and 6 months later you need something, then it's quite obvious that the whole thing wasn't just a scam to get their attention.
So this is important because for raising capital, this is the biggest mistake that students do. They join the academy, then a month later, they start reaching out to people they haven't talked to in 6 months and go, hey, I've got a deal. You want to invest with me?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
Great point.
I don't even know who I'm talking to. I haven't talked to you in 6 months. And then it just started out slow. And that's the other thing. If you're going to look for the deal, you need the money. So you need to be doing both at the same time. So sourcing that capital is important, and getting in front of your audience is really important, and building that list and being targeting. Start with your power base, start with your family, start with your friends, and start building it through. And like Jordan said, I think 6 months, I think you can do better than that. I think you start reaching out every 3 months and be the go-giver. Be the Bob Berg there, where you're giving value to them and not just asking for money or asking for the deal. Really know what the heck's going on in their life. That's really important. I think the other thing is the book by Cialdini, Influence, is really, really powerful for me for the reciprocity, because you're always being reciprocal. You're always asking for something, but you're always willing to give something to somebody before you're asking back. So that's really important on raising capital. What I wanted to ask you is misconceptions. What misconceptions do you see out there when people talk about networking? Other misconceptions out there.
Well, they think they can start building it when they need it. We kind of covered that already. You're too late by the time you need it. They think that it's too late for them already because they're 40. They couldn't possibly start a network. You can build up a network of people in a few months. Like you're probably not going to build up a network where you can borrow millions of dollars for your multifamily property or whatever in a few months, but you're going to be able to build a network in a few months that can give you opportunities, jobs, things like that. The other thing is that the other misconception is that you have to go to these dumb mixers and events, and you have to go to coffee and lunch with 58 people a month, and you don't have to do any of that. I don't do any of that. When I reach out to people via text or phone or email, very rarely do they say, hey, we should get together and do this. It happens, but most of the time people are just as busy. There's this weird sort of hilarious misconception where people are like, oh yeah, Jordan, I haven't been doing 6-minute networking because I don't want to text people and then have them text me and then they're going to want to hang out. And I'm like, yeah, they're going to really want to hang out with you, dude. Sure. Like you should be so lucky that you now opened up this Pandora's box where everybody just wants a piece of your time. Dude, half the people aren't going to reply to you. The other half are going to be like, hi, glad you're doing well. Oh, you had a kid? Congratulations. My kids are 5 and 7 running into a meeting. Bye. Like that's all you're going to get. And that's fine because they don't know you anymore. And it's going to take a while to sort of warm them up. So this misconception that it's going to take a lot of time, I kind of think it's a fake misconception. I think it's an excuse people say. Like, there's probably people that tell you guys things like, oh, multifamily, I can't get into that. You need like $20 million to do that. I'm not rich. I can't do it. So they're like, oh, well, you don't understand what the market's like in downtown Sheboygan, so I'm not going to listen to you guys. And you're just like, whatever. Keep making excuses. I'll be over here helping my students, right?
Before we get to the short answers, I want to ask you, social media, how do you use it? Do you use it to network as far as Facebook, Instagram?
No. I don't care to meet people through those avenues. I use it to communicate with fans of the Jordan Harbinger show, but I do not use it to like reach out to people. Very rarely. I'd say once a month I'll send a message to somebody and I'll be like, hey, I'd love to interview you on the Jordan Harbinger show. Will you come on the show? Or it's like, hey, I noticed that you're in photos with another friend of mine, and you also are a Air Force fighter pilot or something. I don't know, whatever. But it's so rare. I don't reach out and go like, hey, random person, I want to be your friend. Like that's not.
Dude, so many people do that though. We get
don't they call that a poke?
Yeah.
So
you get a lot of cold calls on Instagram.
You get a lot of DMs on Instagram. Hey, I want to meet you. Hey, I want to talk to you. Can you send me more information? And we actually reach out and we'll just send resources, quote unquote, to people. It's pretty big in the education. They just reach out. They like our stuff. We put out memes. It's constantly putting information out there and putting free resources out there and hitting the YouTube channel so people get to know, like, and trust you through the podcast. We have 4 weekly shows. So we have 4 shows going on. So they know us and they'll just reach out to us, and we just reach back out to them with free resources and just start the conversation.
So they're reaching out to you. You're using it for fan communication. You're not reaching out to them and being like, buy my real estate course.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
So reviewing this, you got to build it, It's systematized to a certain extent, and it sounds like the key is the frequency. It's 90 to 180 days. You got to be hitting it.
Or yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because any longer they forget you, in any shorter, it's like, why are you texting me every 2 weeks, dude? I haven't.
Yeah,
what's going on?
You missed the boat. You had a chance.
Stalking.
You let it drift.
Yeah.
And what's the volume? Would you say? Are you maintaining 250 relationships? Like
easily.
Yeah. And that's like six a day during the weekdays. Yeah.
I mean, I usually just block it each week. I do the texting every day. So I call it Connect 4. I text 4 people from the bottom of my text messages. That's also in the 6-minute networking course. But then I'll get into my CRM every week on, let's say, Monday for like 90 minutes, and I send, 50 emails. It takes.
Oh, no shit. So you're hitting 50 a day.
No, just like a week.
Oh, a week. Okay, that makes more
sense. And that adds up to several hundred people over the course of 3 to 6 months easily. And it takes like no time. And the email's very rarely that different. It's like, hey, COVID-19, holy crap, I'm working from home. Business as usual for me. I'm a podcaster. Did an interesting episode about the flu pandemic that came out right before this. Pretty timely. What are you doing? You working from home? Are your kids driving you crazy? Shoot me an update when you get a chance. And people are like, great. And they always reply.
And then it's basically a how to win friends and influence people strategy to me. It's focusing on them and trying to learn about what's going on in their lives and keeping it simple. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because you're trying to figure out how you can deliver value. Like if I get a reply and someone's like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with my kids. Their school's a catastrophe. Nobody's learning online. I'll be like, oh, well, have you thought about getting them to learn a language online? This is a real example. Have you thought about getting them to learn a language online? Because they're going to end up repeating the year, because they don't have a teacher and the teacher's sick and there's not getting any homework and like they can't learn math because you don't know fractions because you're 50 years old now. I'm like, get them to learn a language online. They're 12 years old. They might be really interested in this. They're going to be singing, playing games, having fun with their teacher and like whatever. Why don't they learn a language? And they're like, oh, this is a good idea. I didn't know there was language instruction online. So I'm referring them to the language school. I've got friends' kids learning Mandarin now from my Chinese teacher. And they're like, this is a lifesaver. They spend 2 hours learning Mandarin each day.
And the Mandarin teacher thanks you. So everybody's winning. Yeah.
The Mandarin teacher's like, thanks. You get 2 weeks of free lessons because you referred somebody who bought a year of Mandarin. So like that's good for me. I don't really care as much about that, but like that's good for me, but it's really good. It's good for the kid. It's good for the mom. So like there's a whole lot of easy referral currency to be had out there. So you get a response from somebody that's like, my company is actually hiring like crazy right now because we're a remote software something. And I'm like, oh, that's good to know. What are you hiring for? We're hiring customer service reps. We're hiring sales reps. So then when I email somebody else and they go, I'm freaking screwed. My company's downsizing and they're a customer service rep. I go, well, Zoom or whatever, is hiring like crazy. And they go, oh, really? Right, and I go, boop, boop, and connect
Honeybee.
them. And they're like,
that's the Honeybee.
Yeah, they're like, thanks for giving me a job, man. And I'm like, cool, you're welcome. Thanks for replying to my random email, checking in with a picture of my kid's diaper. Like that stuff is not hard to do. You don't know what opportunities you're going to get from reaching out to people because most opportunities are over the horizon. You don't know that the person you're reaching out to has a job that they can provide to someone else. You don't know the person you're reaching out to has a need that you can solve through somebody else that also replied to that same email. So like, when the whole thing hit, I had somebody go, hey, do you need masks? And I said, I don't know if I need masks, but I bet you somebody I know needs masks. So they said, great, we can get you a few thousand masks. And I said, great, I want like 10,000 masks. So I got 10,000, KN95 masks that the health workers wear. And then I posted on social, hey, I was able to buy at cost this few thousand masks. Who needs them for healthcare workers? Send me a message. And so I sold them all at cost to people who needed them. And people were like, this is awesome. Thank you. Our whole hospital's out of masks, whatever. So that was easy because I basically bought masks from somebody that was like, I got a crap load of masks, not sure what to do with them, not near a hospital that needs them. And I took them all, and then I got them all mostly to like New York, and LA. So that type of thing is actually life-saving, but usually you just don't know what's going to come across in an opportunity. You might find somebody that needs their website redesigned, and then you find out that the barista at the Starbucks that you're at that is now closed actually was a part-time graphic designer, and he suddenly is like, I'm screwed. And you're like, actually, you want to take a stab at your dream job instead of making lattes? That's also a real example. So there's a lot you can do as long as you realize that you don't know where the opportunities are, because those people don't even know where the opportunities are. They're invisible until you start scratching at the surface.
But Jordan, what's really cool about your situation is the way you're going at it. Most people want to get something in return. It seems like you don't want to get compensated or anything. I think people have to get over that mental barrier of like, if I'm going to put the barista together with this person, I need to get a little rip, and that's the problem.
No. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, but most people are worried about that. That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why they don't know how to network. That's why they're always looking at something from their perspective. You've got the long game, like multifamily. You're not the linear approach. You've got that long view approach. And I think just to change people's minds, perceptions about that is the number one thing in networking. Don't expect anything in return. But the way life is, it's really weird. Something usually does happen in return with you.
Well, dude, think about most people, like, a few weeks ago, they'd have been like, oh, opportunity. I can sell these masks at 10X, price or something right now. There's people looking at stuff like that. And like, you're trying to like sell toilet paper on like line for like an increase, stupid shit, but
I sold them at costs. I charge shipping and stuff like that, obviously. And I had to buy some boxes. So whatever, but the margin isn't like $3 a mask. It's like, 30 cents to pay for the freaking costs. So and cover some of the risk of like getting screwed on a payment, which didn't happen actually. So there's a lot of benefit to be had for this. And you had a good point about not looking for anything in return, because if you start looking for something in return, it not only, look, a lot of people go, oh, look at this Pollyanna guy. Like, oh, don't expect anything in return. Look, that's a good way to think, but let's suppose you don't believe that. You're still damaging yourself if you look for something in return, because let's say that I'm at a party with you guys and I'm looking for a lawyer, right? Because I got to handle some lawsuit. I start talking to you and I'm like, what do you guys do? And you're like, oh, we run multifamily real estate and we teach people how to do that. Now, if I'm not looking for that, I'm looking over your shoulder. I'm bored. I'm kind of half-assing the conversation. I'm feigning interest while being like, crap, I wonder if anyone around here is a lawyer, right? But if I'm just looking for opportunities in my network, then every single person I talk to is a potential opportunity for somebody else that I know. Because while I might not be getting into multifamily real estate anytime soon, I for sure am going to run into somebody who is in that industry, wants to be in that industry, etc. So all I do is I put a little mental note and I'm like, okay, Jake and Gino, put them in the CRM and put the keyword real estate, multifamily real estate, whatever. And then as that is in there, as the year goes by, I may run a search for that, or you may just be top of mind and I can make that introduction to somebody else. If you start looking for what's in it for you, you just miss all of those opportunities because you're looking for the one person in a room of 1,000 who can actually help you, instead of meeting 10, 20 people in that room of 1,000 and using them to help 10, 20, 50 people that you already know, and vice versa. If you meet one website designer, even if you don't need a website, what happens when you go to another room full of people that are all starting businesses? They all need websites. Well, cool. I know a guy that can do it. He doesn't have to give me 10%, but I bet you that if I throw him 12 clients and I need a new website next year, I'm going to get a free freaking website, right? Because he's going to be like, just keep throwing me these clients, dude. You made me like $100,000. I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to do it at cost, whatever. So that happens to me all the time. If you're doing this right, you'll look like the luckiest person in the world, because it'll be like, how did you get that? How did this happen to you? Why did that happen to you? Oh, because I've helped out so many people that even if 99 out of 100 never help me back, the 1 in 100 does. And if I'm helping 10,000 people a year, I'm getting a lot of opportunities. You know what I mean?
Yep. Very cool. Let's take a quick time out to hear from our sponsor. Gino and I are super excited to tell you about the audiobook version of The Honeybee, which was recently released.
The Honeybee tells the story of Noah, a disappointed, disaffected salesman who feels like his life is going nowhere until the day he has a chance encounter with a man named Tom Barnum, the beekeeper. In his charming, down-home way, Tom, the bee man, teaches Noah and his wife Emma how to grow their personal wealth using the lessons he learned from his beekeeping passion.
In the audio version, Gino and I sat down for an exclusive interview after each chapter, where we elaborate on the stings we felt throughout the business, the importance of scaling up, and how we've been able to create multiple streams of revenue.
For more information and to get your copy of the audiobook, visit
Go on other podcasts. That's really one of the best tips. Also, you can buy ads on other shows. That works too.
What is your best habit for personal success? Best personal habit, something you do on a daily or weekly basis?
I would say the Connect 4 drill that I do every morning. Well, it's not too early, but 10 a.m. To text 4 people from the bottom of my text list. That's definitely the best.
Book recommendation.
Ooh, good one. Well, as usual, it depends, but I would say Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink is pretty good. Stop blaming other people for the crap that's happening to you and just figure out how you can fix it.
What project are you excited about right now?
I'm always excited about my show, but that's not that interesting for you guys. I'm helping people get masks again, so that's pretty cool. There's a guy that's 3D printing mask parts, not the filter, but like the actual mask. And so I'm like, oh, there's legs here. Because every UPS store, which by the way, most of them are still open across North America, they all have 3D printers. So theoretically, we could all be 3D printing a mask. Nice. Yeah. Theoretically, we can all 3D print a mask. We don't have to take up the healthcare supply. And even healthcare workers could 3D print, plastic mask that can be sanitized with chemicals or UV. And you just put a new filter over it. It uses 50% less plastic and is much more sustainable, fits perfectly, and is reusable.
What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you if they want to step up their networking game or, just learn more about your show?
Sure. So the Jordan Harbinger show is available anywhere you get podcasts. There's also jordanharbinger.com and jordanharbinger.com/course where 6-Minute Networking is. And I'm at Jordan Harbinger on Instagram and Twitter.
Gino, it sounds a lot like work. I think I'm going to get a VA for this and just have them do it for me. And then hopefully they'll fill me in with a summary at the end of the week. What do you think? Does that work?
Stenziano, they need to hear your voice. They need to know that you're not faking it, bro. You know that. I mean, you could fake it around, but I think it's part. And for real estate investors out there, there's 2 things you're doing. You're sourcing capital and sourcing deals. And if you can't do both, get a partner and pick which one you like. I'm not the craziest person. I don't like to talk to a lot of people throughout the day. That's why we've got Taravella on Brand Partners. He's sourcing the investors, and obviously you want to be the brand, but I think there's a lot of work involved. There's a lot of forethought, and it's like everything else. It's a system. You can systemize. I would get Jordan Harbinger's course, go through it, and then figure out how you can work with him, because this is the name of the game. Because right now, the opportunities are here. The deals are here now. Everyone wanted a deal, right, Jake?
You need the money.
Now there's no money, right? It just flip-flops really quick, and there's a market cycle. There's a cycle in real estate. It's going to follow the cycle every 7 to 8 years. So these opportunities are going to come. So I think networking, people think, hey, I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. Well, listen, that's a bunch of crap. You can do it so many different ways. You can text, you can email, you can call. There's so many different ways to become a networker. Not network marketing, Jake, a networker. It's really important that you start building that skill.
Network marketing? What?
Yeah, network marketing. And my course is free, by the way. I don't know if I said that. I don't charge for stuff like that. I want everybody to do it because they realize that it changes their life, and then they like me forever. That's my value.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Very cool. Jordan, appreciate you, and best of luck with everything in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's fun.
Thanks,
Take
Jordan.
care.